Hello and welcome to On the Record, your playbook for tapping India. Today we have a special guest, Spencer. He is the founder of Commenda, which helps businesses operate in multiple geographies like US, UK, UAE, Singapore and few more geographies. Today we are going to look at if you are trying to expand your business to UAE, what are the factors that you should look at before deciding and moving your business to UAE? Hey, thanks, Spencer. Pleasure to have you on the show. Look forward to having your insights as to how we go about if I'm trying to expand my business to UAE.
Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here.
So, if I'm a founder who's based out of India or US or anywhere else, what are those factors that I should be looking at while expanding my business to UAE? Like, why should I consider UAE or not any other geography like US, Singapore, or anything else?
Yeah, I think the UAE, it's becoming more trendy. I think a lot of people look into it. But I'll say it's of all the markets we've discussed, the US and Singapore and now the UAE, it's certainly it's the trickiest one to navigate and to kind of fit into your business. If you're an early stage company, it's not extremely normal to have that be your parent company. You're probably not going to raise funds into it. I know people who have, and they've told me that they regretted it. They should have done US or Singapore. That's one. Two is, again, when is it going to be beneficial, right? Like, when should you be setting up a business in the UAE? I think there's a few different scenarios where it makes sense. One is that it gives you access to the Gulf market. There's the GCC, which is a kind of common economic area. If you want to sell into markets, not just the UAE, but Oman and other countries like that, there are benefits. We see a lot of people that are selling into that market, and they use Dubai as their beachhead into the GCC. The free zones do offer very business-friendly regulations, low taxes. The UAE just instituted a corporate tax for the first time this year. Right. They do have a VAT, but the threshold for that is reasonably high. And so because of that, it's a good option for larger businesses typically, or at least mid-sized businesses that are looking to expand and maybe import or export things through that entity or things like that. That's the most common case we see.
So I know there's a lot of Web3 companies who have started headquartering at UAE. Yeah. But apart from Web3, what other important sectors do you see? Like, is it tech or is it more on trading, import-export? Import-export is a wider term, but more around trading, services. What is that industry which is thriving more in UAE?
Yeah, we see a diversity of businesses that we work with that go through the free zones in the UAE. And I say in the UAE, not Dubai. You actually also have Sharjah, which gives you a lot of the same legal rights and is cheaper. It's just that you've never seen the Instagram ads with the hot women in Sharjah. They're always in Dubai, so you pay a premium. But there's all these reasons why it benefits. Like, we have one company that does like drones, and they're doing import-export. It's a smoother financial system to plug into, again, than certain ones like Indonesia or India. There's that benefit there. We see people setting up agencies. Again, there's some cachet, cultural cachet to having a Dubai agency versus, a Calcutta-based agency. And, maybe I like Calcutta more, but maybe there's some perception that if I'm in Dubai, there's some cachet to that. So we also see businesses like that are small businesses. But we also see enormous businesses, publicly traded companies that set up subsidiaries there to move goods through, to expand into the GCC. I can't say I'd recommend it for fundraising, again, like I said, but we see all kinds of businesses use it. And it's set up to be like a real hub.
Right. So any specific territory in UAE you would recommend based on the business type, or like more or less free zones have similar experience?
I think the free zones are this very poorly understood phenomenon. So, what are they? Obviously, it's that the government of the UAE allows for these sort of specific governance regions where you actually have almost like privately owned jurisdictions, right? So in the way that you have like different states in the US, you actually have these free zones in the UAE, and picking which one to register in, it's not straightforward. it's hard to get good information. And there's pros and cons to this. Because they kind of run like businesses, they almost market themselves and can create this false sense of like, well, okay, I'm better for this kind of company or for this kind of company. And like, what are the actual tangible reasons? It can be hard to say. There's definitely some of the more famous ones. DMCC always comes up. The finance center always comes up. But I think another thing business owners should be aware of is that you can register a Sharjah free zone company. It confers the same legal rights as a Dubai one, but as I mentioned, just because you've never seen I've never seen an Instagram ad that says "Come to Sharjah, Habibi." It's always "Come to Dubai." You'll actually see a lot of startups will be in Abu Dhabi because that's where the venture capital money is in the UAE.
Okay.
That's for the tech startup point. If you are going to do it, typically what I have seen is Abu Dhabi. But the big thing is to understand the free zones they're privately owned, but they are jurisdictions like a state in the U.S. or like a country in most of the world. Is that they're different legal jurisdictions with different rules, but they're privately held.
Right. So, what is the reason of being in UAE? Like, do you see more paper companies? And with a paper company, I mean that you are headquartered or having a presence in that market. But how do you see the ecosystem? For example, talent ecosystem. Can I hire employees, good quality at a cheaper price, or it is only for sales that I should be present in UAE? What are those things?
Yeah, I think that's another really common thing you'll see, and that's why companies will set up in Dubai. Dubai has a lot of talent. It's become quite a hub for remote work. For example, I've met people there from Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, India, obviously, the United States, all over. We'll move to Dubai.
But Dubai is an expensive place, so how would you compare the cost?
It depends on what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing it to San Francisco, it's quite cheap. If you're comparing it to Bangalore, it's quite expensive.
Right.
But I think talent in Dubai it's going to cost less than talent in the United States.
Right.
But so we have seen for hiring purposes that's less common. I don't think anyone thinks of Dubai as an outsourcing hub.
Right.
But it's really an industrial hub, right? I mean, if you go back to the business history of it, I think the first free zone was around the energy trade, which makes sense.
Right.
And there's a lot of factories and industry in the UAE, and I think that's what makes it such a dynamic market, right? Like we talk about the US, which is also a dynamic market, but for the purpose of our audience, the US is mostly going to be for tech and software, right? And then Singapore will be sort of similar. But the UAE is dynamic, right? Like maybe you're Series B, maybe you're looking to have something for export purposes, smoother payments around the world. The UAE becomes very appealing at that stage of your company.
Also, do you think like the currency fluctuation is not there in UAE versus US dollar, right? So they are kind of fixed price. Is that also a good reason why a lot of people go to UAE so that you have a predictable dollar income or like you don't have to worry about forex fluctuations? Yeah,
I think the dirham is one of the better currencies to transact in. I think that's definitely one of the benefits. I don't want to get too much into forex. Again, that's probably its own video series, but it does always feel like the dirham is one of the better currencies you can do business in.
UAE has typically been known to be much more conservative, both in culture and since they are ruled by kings. So they have like a lot of fluctuations. How stable is the economy today from like international business setting up there? Do you think anything to worry about because the rules could change overnight or anything? What kind of trend you have been seeing over the last few years?
Well, you always want to be careful of predicting these things, right? Like, especially in that region, things can be unpredictable. I think the UAE does have a track record now of many decades of good governance.
Awesome.
The interesting thing about the UAE, they're actually recruiting government leaders from Singapore. I mean, in classic UAE style, they're rolling out like a blank check, truck full of cash to these Singapore government officials, like, come help us build a better governance system. I think they're very serious about it. I think the interesting thing about Dubai, if you look at the demographics of the city, at this point, it's majority immigrants, and it's driven by its culture of commerce. Now, again, there's all these problems. All those people they're not citizens. Most of them aren't. Almost none of them are citizens, actually. there's all those problems there, but that's for a politics podcast. But I think there's this whole interesting point where I do think the commerce culture has become pervasive there. I think the people of Dubai that live there, they want this. It is a monarchy. There's always some chance you get like a crazy guy. If you know your Roman history or something, you get one crazy emperor and it all gets blown to bits. But I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I think they're very serious about it. To your point about like the culture there, I think the culture is like much more open than it gets credit for. I think I see no tangible reason to be concerned. I think, and anything else would be conjecture.
Cool. So what kind of company structure I should look at now? Once I've identified UAE is my next destination, what options are available and how should I decide on one?
Yeah. So the process, once you've decided that you're going to set up an entity in the UAE, is you're going to want to decide on a couple of things. Which free zone or free zones do you want to look at? What business licenses do you want to pursue? What visa strategy do you want to pursue for the directors? And I can explain this a little bit more. And then, setting up a bank account, it's been non-straightforward at times. It's gotten better in the last few months, but there was a period where, because of some issues around Russian sanctions enforcement, U.S.-Russia situation, there were some delays in setting up bank accounts for foreign companies. That's alleviated now, but for example, as part of the process of getting a bank account, you have to get a visa in the UAE as a director in the company. You actually have to go get a biometric assessment done, and you have to verify like certain health factors about whoever may be getting that visa. And it's again not a simple process. Like you think it might be hard to set up a business in India, let's say. You don't have to get a blood test to set up a business in India.
Right.
That's actually just in the UAE. And again, that maybe goes back to the cultural bit we just touched on, right? Where because it's this culture of kind of like outside people that come in, that's one of the ways where it does become tangible, right? Is it's like you're being blood tested to set up a company, but it's just part of their visa process.
But what kind of company structures are available? Like you have private limited,
free zone company. Free zone company is what's
it's called just free zone company.
FZC.
FZC
is what you would hear.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever.
How much time generally it takes to set up one?
This is a loaded question. There's a lot of steps. Like I said, the UAE, of all the markets that we've discussed here, by far the most complicated. There's a whole process of applying for a visa, getting the biometric assessment, registering for your business license, setting up your bank account, getting your normal incorporation process done, and just getting the documents and everything. You typically will have to get, if you're coming from a foreign country, you're going to have to actually get certain documents attested by a UAE consulate or embassy in the country you're in, and then they can come in. It's a whole process. You could look at 4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks?
Yeah, and that's if you're diligent. I mean, sometimes things, right, you're busy, you have other things to do other than set up a free zone company.
That's still faster than India at least.
Well, India's gotten faster. I would give India some credit.
For a foreign company, it takes a little longer.
Yeah, for a foreign company, it'll take some time, but 4 to 6 weeks is, I think globally on the slower side of things in the markets where we operate. But as I mentioned earlier, we operate in typically very business-friendly markets. So maybe that's why it feels, I'm sure setting up a foreign entity in like Ecuador, for example, would be much harder.
Right.
Yeah.
And how's the compliance looks like? Is it complex? Again, on the scale of 1 to 10, 1 being harder and 10 being easy.
Yeah.
Where would you rate Dubai, and what's the best way of going about it?
Well, this is probably trending in the wrong direction just because they just instituted a new corporate tax, so everyone's stressed about it. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. It's a flat tax. I want to say 9%. It's pretty simple. You have a VAT system, standard VAT system. There's a threshold. You hit it. You have to report quarterly. You have to renew your business licenses on a regular basis. That'll be a few $1,000s a year. You have to renew your visa on a regular basis. And there's this whole thing where, like, again, because these free zones compete with each other, they'll actually offer deals like, oh, you only have to renew this visa every 2 years, or oh, like we'll do it, you get a 3-year visa, or so it does vary on the costs and timelines. But the business license and the visa you have to renew. There's the VAT.
Why do you need a visa? Do I need to keep traveling to UAE every few months or weeks? to keep my company running, or I can be completely sitting on the foreign land and keep running my company?
Yeah,
for
so if
years?
you have the investor visa, you do actually have to spend a minimum amount of time in the UAE every year. I don't recall exactly what it is. Some people just call that a vacation, right? It's not the worst thing that could happen to you. Well, sorry, you just say to your wife or your husband, or I'm sorry, I actually have to go to Dubai for 2 weeks. It's for work. I have to sit on a beach there to meet my visa requirements. But I do believe there's a minimum requirement.
So coming back to the question of 1 to 10, where would you rate?
Well, now I'm starting to feel like it's very hard, right? Maybe it'd be like below a 5. But I think the benefit is, again, if you're a large company, this is why you don't see startups doing this, because it's tedious for a founder and expensive to do. But if you're a large business and you're looking to move a lot of goods or hire a lot of people or do a lot of business there, it makes sense because the tax system is relatively streamlined, the taxes are low, there's a very business-friendly environment once you're set up. But to your point, again, probably below 5 now that I think about it, but it also depends on the scale of my business.
But coming back to again the compliance complexity, so one you said is the tax rate that we agreed, but that is more like an annual filing on paying of taxes. Yeah. But then any other compliance like various business licenses and all, are they complex to manage? Is the frequency of filing of returns pretty often? Like, is it monthly, quarterly, half yearly, anything? Some insights if you can give, some of the major licenses.
Yeah.
Typical business would require, not a very large, but mid-sized businesses.
Yeah, so I'll say mid-sized. Let's just assume you're below the VAT threshold. If you're at the VAT threshold, again, that's like any VAT, GST kind of system. It might be quarterly, monthly, whatever. Then there's the corporate tax, that's annual. I said, they're saying it seems like it could change. There's a lot of uncertainty right now around that. The business licenses will typically be annual, and the visas are going to be something like annual as well.
So what's the average cost of running a show in UAE?
Yeah, to set the entity up, the cheapest it typically will be is about 5,000 USD, and it goes up to about, we've had some that cost as much as 12 to 13,000 USD to set up, and annually you're looking at probably $5,000 to $8,000 a year. I mean, it's hard to say. Obviously depends on the service provider.
That's not too much considering the kind of prospect GCC countries are offering today.
That's baseline though. Well, in Saudi's even more expensive. Saudis, we actually have a partner there. We haven't launched it, but Saudi it goes from like 15 and it's very expensive. Right. Although they're saying no corporate tax for 30 years in Riyadh if you set up your headquarters there. So it's I think you'll probably see Dubai and Riyadh get into a bit of an arms race to try and attract business. It'll be very good for businesses that want to operate in the region.
It's good to have competition.
Yeah, and it will be.
It's good for the customer.
Right, there's somewhere where Qatar is a little too politicized as a market, right? They have, like, Dubai is very neutral. Doha is not quite as
more
neutral.
More westernized.
Yeah, and Saudi's trying to position itself, and they're very intense about that. And I've met some founders from Riyadh. It's very dynamic. There's a lot of energy. They're building a lot there, right? This big wall, this line, if you've heard of, they're building this. So I think Riyadh's going to compete with Dubai. I think you'll see that'll be good for businesses setting up in the region because it'll give multiple options and they'll have to get better to attract businesses.
Good. To sum up, I think it's good for mid-sized businesses who's trying to primarily sell in GCC, not potentially to just hire talent or for a tech company who's trying to raise money. These are not the great destination. But if you have customers, if you have a market or a business in Dubai, either around trading, hardware or anything else, then it could probably be a great idea to move your business to UAE. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Right. It was really pleasure having you on the show, and I hope our audience would probably get better insight if they're trying to consider expanding to UAE. This video could have been useful. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks, Spencer. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.